Yes, guys, and welcome to the Sunderland vs Wolves match preview. Now, I'm aware that this is very premature. Usually I like to do my previews after watching the pre-match presser. However, my schedule this week doesn't allow that, so there's going to be a degree of guesswork when it comes to injuries and players' availabilities and stuff like that, because there are a couple of players, a lot of you are probably very much aware that there are a couple of players that are going to be big doubts for this weekend, and it's just going to add to a bit of a list that's starting to grow at the moment in terms of injuries, potential anyway, but we will see. But before we do get into it, I'm going to ramble away nevertheless. So before we do get into it, if you can hit the like button for me, it's massively appreciated. And subscribe if you are new. We're trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and every single one of your subscriptions are massively appreciated. So if you're someone who are watching or someone who is watching the content quite regularly and you're not yet subscribed, if you can consider it, it'd be so appreciated and I'd be very, very grateful. So getting into it, we will start off with Wolves before I go off on a huge tangent and a huge ramble about Sunderland. So we are taking on bottom of the league Wolves. So on paper, it seems like it's a great time to take on Wolves. They lost their opening 5 games of the season. They have drew their last couple. Now, they have looked massively improved in terms of the last couple of games. The last game against Brighton, they drew 1-1. Now, if you look at the stats of that game, and this is why I always say that I don't listen to stats because they do me head in, particularly like with Sunderland, the amount of times where Sunderland have won a game 2 or 3-0 and or just a win in general, but then people say, oh, but the other team had 70% possession, you didn't deserve it. Does it matter? Does it really matter? Because if you have a look at the stats on paper for the Brighton Wolves game last time out, I think Brighton had nearly triple the amount of attempts than Wolves did, but none of them were big, clear-cut chances, whereas for me, Wolves made far more clear-cut chances than they did. I think that their manager early on in that game did get a red card, so I don't know whether he'll be serving a suspension or a ban, or he'll be on the touchline, in the stands for the game. I'm not too sure how it works with managers. I don't know whether it's the same as players. But yeah, they got themselves in the lead, and probably rightfully so. They made some really, really good chances for some really good saves, and they were probably unfortunate to go 2-0 up before, or they were unfortunate that they didn't go 2-0 up before that very late equaliser from Brighton. I think Strand Larsen, a player who I'm a big fan of. I will say, Strand Larsen, I think the last time I used to play FIFA many years ago, I did buy him. So for me personally, it feels like a bit of a betrayal that we're facing him this weekend, but that's just stupidity on my part. But yeah, he is someone who I do look towards for their sort of vocal point. Big lad, strong lad, but equally he's very good with his feet. He loves to run the channels, get in behind, and he absolutely gives them that outlet that I often speak about with us sometimes that we do need, in terms of if they do need to just get it away, hoof it football, just play it down the channel for him to chase. 9 times out of 10 he's going to get there. He likes to cut in behind, good with his feet, he can drive, he can hold up the ball very well and wait for the attack to join up with him. Very good with that, and he did it time and time again against Brighton as well. So he was very unfortunate to get on the score sheet against Brighton. He did hit the post after some fantastic work, and then of course they went up the other end and they made it 1-1 very, very late on. So it's not as if they're just bending over or they're just collapsing at every opportunity. Of course, they probably should or could have done a lot better in the opening 5, where they did lose all 5 of them. Their only victories this season have come through the League Cup in the second and third round respectively. But they have looked, I think some of the games you might think was a little bit unjust, but equally some of them you can see why they are where they are in the league. But they do have threats, as I say. They've been in the Premier League for a long time and for a reason, so you have to pay them respect. You can't just say they're bottom of the league, so we must be getting 3 points here, although I can see the argument for that, because with Sunderland now, we do need to keep picking up points, particularly at home, our foundation, because we have such a strong and such a difficult run of fixtures coming up after this game. And that's not to just say, okay, well, this will be easy. Wolves is an easy 3 points. Then we'll focus on hard games, because this Wolves side are going to be absolutely desperate, particularly after losing the opening 5, then drawing the last couple where they have been improving. They have finally picked up a couple of points here and there. They'll come to Sunderland, a newly promoted side, and with the injury news I'm about to discuss, they'll look at us just as much as a massive opportunity to pick up their first 3 points of the season, just as much as we'll be looking at them as a good opportunity to get another 3 points on the board. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a real fight, a real test, and it's definitely going to test a lot of these players who might not have expected to get a game this Saturday. But I'm going to get on Sunderland now, because that has been some really not going to beat around the bush. There's been some really shit news throughout the week. Now, it hasn't been completely confirmed as to how long they're going to be out for. But firstly, Noah Siddiqui on international duty. He was due to have a couple of games. I think he pulled up with an ankle sprain, so he didn't feature in either of them. Or I think he might have gone off in the first game. Could be wrong there, but I know that he didn't feature in the second one at the very least. Now, with an ankle sprain, best case scenario, you're looking at 3-4 weeks. Worst case scenario, you're looking at maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe. But we're going to have a look at that one. I think a lot of people have been reading off sort of the foreign press and foreign outlets for that. I'm just hoping that there's some kind of some kind of translation issues there and we've read it wrong or something like that. But it does seem to be Noah Siddiqui has picked up an ankle sprain, which is a nightmare. Particularly because we've lost Diarra as well, who's currently out injured until December, it seems. And we, of course, brought in Siddiqui and Diarra to play in that first 11, in that starting 11, alongside Granit Xhaka to be that engine room. And now we've got rid of both of them, not got rid, but we've lost them both to injuries. So that engine room has been depleted. And there isn't any player that we've got right now who, for me, is almost a like-for-like replacement who can do the same job and to the level that they have done at the minute. So there might be a system revamp or a change or just personnel change. I don't know. But another one, this bloke here who's been one of my players of the season, probably my favourite player so far, Alderete, he has also picked up a knock. I don't know whether it's a muscle strain. Again, I think some people have been a bit lost in translation with the way the sort of foreign outlets have described this. They've described it in about 3 or 4 different ways from what I've read. So there's nothing as of right now that I can really confirm to you guys. Again, I haven't watched a pre-match presser because it's only Wednesday as I'm recording this. So it's difficult for me to guess. I don't know whether it could have been a bit of cramp or just a bit of a muscle, sort of a muscle pain type thing. And if it is just a bit of a muscle strain or whatever, hopefully I'm thinking it could just be a bit of a like a 2-day thing, it wears off, a bit of cramp, I don't know. But again, it could be worse and it's looking likely that he's not going to feature. So in terms of who I think we should be playing, I'll try and discuss an 11 with the thought process that Alderete and Siddiqui aren't going to be featuring, which it's a nightmare as it is because of course we've got Ronaldo who's serving his the last of his 3-game ban, or his 3-match ban. So there's holes all over the pitch at the minute, and we're still trying to find those sort of best 11. And I know that each scenario is very, very different depending on the game who we're coming up against. So for me, I'm thinking, even though I don't want us to be starting every game with that 5 at the back, I do have a feeling that given that engine room has been depleted so heavily, maybe to be as structurally solid as possible at the back and then catch them on the break, he might go for that. Because with Siddiqui and Diarra, you've got that box-to-box work. And that's not to say, that Lafay or Rig or Daniel can't necessarily do it, but they can't do it to their standard, the same as Diarra and Siddiqui. That's just my opinion. They can't. So maybe to chuck an extra lad at the back to kind of help out and then maybe focus on wing play, getting forward down the wings. That might be a way to go. So if you did have a 5 at the back, you might see Dan Ballard in there, Mukiele, and then even the return of Luke O'Nien. I know that everyone's going to shit all over me for that, but I'm just thinking about what we could do. I know we have Hertrada as well, who could also play in a back 3, but I'd like to see maybe Hume on the left and Hertrada on the right, if that's going to happen, because Masuaku at the minute for me is not up to it. So Hertrada, who has played at right back and in the middle of midfield for us so far this season in his bit part roles, I think he might prefer to see Hertrada on the right and Hume on the left, and then those 3 that I mentioned, and then Hume and Hertrada can get forward as they like to do, then have a 2 midfield and work it that way, just to get some bodies upfield if we are going to go forward. Again, I don't want to see that happen. It sounds a bit of a mess to me, but I'm just thinking that Regis might think, with the engine room completely smashed to bits, we might just have to be solid at the back for this one. Maybe. Could be wrong. If not, we'll remain with the 4 at the back. And if that's the case, I'd have Roofs in goal. Left back, again, I probably want to go with Hume at left back. And then I would have Hertrada at right back, Mukiele and Dan Ballard in the middle. I think that's probably the best, most solid or the most safest 4 I would go with. Again, because Masuaku, as good as he's going forward, or decent as he's going forward, he's had a very tricky start and he scares the shit out of me defensively. So Hume for me would be a much more solid option. Ballard coming back because he would be outstanding for set pieces. Because, if you get a quick cross in the box, an early cross in the box, and from set pieces, Wolves have been prone to be maybe a little bit vulnerable from set pieces. Ballard in there, who's probably one of the best players in the league at attacking the ball, in terms of a defender attacking the ball, and I don't even care whether that sounds like I'm going over the top. He's a monster, crashing in the box, going for crosses, and winning balls in the box anyway. So that would be, I would be very happy and safe with that back four. And then maybe if he is going to stay with the same system, Xhaka as the holder, then Lafay and Rigg either side, but they are going to have to do the dirty work. You know, Rigg was in the England under-21s this week, and he did very well. I think he scored a goal very recently as well. He captained the side, so he'll be wanting to continue with momentum. Regis might either think, give him a rest, or he might think, right, he's been playing well, let's keep him going. So that might be an option with Lafay and Rigg. But like I said, both of them are going to have to be very, very disciplined, along with Xhaka in the middle, who you don't need to tell him to be disciplined because he knows what he's doing. Then on one side, I would probably have a Dingra. Then on the right, I'd have Talby. Or even the other way around, because I think Talby's brilliant at cutting in from left to right. And then you've got a Dingra who, I think in the bit part roles, we've seen him on the right. I think he's been okay. And then as a striker, yeah, I think I'd probably like to see Isidore remain up top. However, a bit of a curveball, I might like to see Brobby start. Now, the reason I say that, not just because I'm feeling sorry for him or out of pity, but I'd like to see him given that opportunity from the off at the stage of my life where with the crowd behind us, and we do start to control games sometimes, I'd like to see him in that atmosphere from the off and given that chance. You know, since we got beat against Manchester United, which, you know, it is what it is, it wouldn't be a poor time to at least rotate and give him a go. And I know that after that Manchester United game, I don't know whether any of you guys saw it, but I think it was that one fan online, I think, made a really, really shitty comment about Brobby, given that, you know, we're 6-7 games into the season, and Brobby hasn't even been here for all of them games. He's played bit pot roles here and there, and there's one fan, it was literally one fan from ISO anyway, making really, really shitty comments about him. And then I think there was a Dutch outlet that picked that up because, of course, going from Ajax, and I think he had a bad season, his last season at Ajax, didn't he? They picked up that one tweet and plastered it everywhere, basically making out that Sunderland fans think he's shit. And I believe Bobby's family and stuff were sticking up for him on social media and stuff. I could be going a bit over, but that's what I've gleaned, or that's what I'm kind of getting, or at least that's what I believe that has happened to a degree. And his head must be down. He must be thinking, what, I've played, 45 minutes in total? Do you know what I mean? In my bit part roles, or however long it's been, and I'm being shit all over, which wasn't the case. It was one fan. You know, if you don't like the lad or you don't rate him, you don't need to spout out off and say he's the worst player since Josie Altidore, which is what I believe the comment was, which I just thought was really shitty to say. So I'd like to see him get an opportunity. I believe we did play a behind closed doors friendly against Livingston. We won 2-0, and I believe Brobby was a goal scorer in that game. So hopefully that's put him in good stead, in a good mindset, and just for us to really get behind him, you know, for the stadium to see him from the off, our new number 9 up top, really get behind him, make the ground as hostile as possible, and be right behind him. And I'd love to see him get a goal. But yeah, I've been rambling away far too long here, haven't I? Just rambling away a bit too much. But yeah, so I've been a bit of a mess with 2 different potential lineups there. But let me know down below what lineup you would go with. Now, for my prediction for this game, I'm going to go for a Sunderland 1-0 win. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be cagey as all hell. And it just depends what lineup we get, because it is going to be really just trying to... It's going to be like a real difficult jigsaw puzzle with all these injuries. And it just has to be the right 11 for this game. Because as I say, Wolves are going to be so up for this one. So we need to meet them and match them and beyond. So yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-0 win. And I'm letting my heart rule this one. I think Brian Brobby's going to get it. 1-0 Sunderland. Maybe late on, maybe early on, then we hang on for dear life. That probably sounds a bit better, doesn't it? That sounds a bit more realistic. But yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-0 Sunderland win. It could go either way, but it would be a brilliant win nevertheless, particularly with the injuries, concerns that we do have. But yeah, so I have rambled enough there, guys. I know that I haven't been concrete with injury news, but it's just what we've gleaned so far via the press. Sunderland might put a post out soon, because they do like to give updates about the players when they've been on international duty, but they've very conveniently haven't mentioned Siddiqui or Alderete, but they've mentioned everyone else at the moment. So we'll see if we do get an update very, very shortly. But I'll leave you there, guys. Let me know down below what you think is going to happen this weekend. What lineup would you go with if Siddiqui and Alderete aren't fit? Who would you go with in your starting 11? But if you've enjoyed, hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you're new. But for now, how are the lads? keep the faith.